welcome to the Chile Today podcast. I'm Bethany Francis.
And I'm Lenny Kluge.
We're two immigrants living in Chile talking about Chilean news, cultural events, travel, business, and more.
If you want to support our podcast, check out our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Chile Today Podcast. That's one word. www.patreon.com/The Chile Today Podcast.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to the Chile Today podcast, as we already said. Hey, what's going on, Lenny? How are you? How was your week this week?
I was good. You know what? Every time you ask me that, I'm completely caught off guard.
No wonder you're so bad at interviews.
Yeah. You know what? I think I should... Gee, thanks. I think what I should do is I should just prepare a list with possible topics to talk about. Something like that. It was like, oh, well, since you're asking, I'll just go down the list.
Since you ask.
I had a very nice meal this week.
Went to the gym. I started yoga this week.
You did?
Uh-huh.
How's that working out for you? Working out, see what I did there?
You said that as if you were like, fucking yoga.
I tried yoga. It's really not my...
There's a couple people in the world that really like yoga. So I tried it out.
Yoga's like CrossFit these days. Just people who do talk about it all the time.
Oh, well, I was just proud that I'm actually moving my body.
And I am absolutely proud for you.
Okay.
Of you.
Well, thanks. Anyway, so I started yoga because I work at home and I barely get out of my pajamas most days.
Oh, tell me about it.
So I'm going to try to do 30 sessions of yoga 3 times a week and see if I feel better about my life. Yeah, so we'll see. I did my first week and my body hurts. And
tends to happen.
Yeah, tends to happen.
Tends, nice. Now I tried Yoda.
I tried Yoda.
Yoda once I tried.
Delicious, lime flavored.
No, I tried yoga once for a half a year, and I just left every class more frustrated and more flustered than when I got in, and then I was like,
why?
This is not how yoga is supposed to work. I don't know, I guess I just got frustrated because I wasn't really flexible enough to not even just do the easiest poses. And
I'm super flexible because I have no muscles. I'm basically just...
Oh, that's my problem then. I'm all muscles. You know what I'm saying?
I'm basically just a giant jelly roll right now.
You're a mollusk.
And so I'm so flexible. I thought it was actually a really good thing. I was talking to my fiance and I was like, I'm so flexible. I'm really good at this. And he was like, because you have no muscles. And I was like, you know what? Let me have this. Let me have this. So, events. We have events coming up. We have a new event, actually, but we'll get back to that in a second. The closest event to us is going to be the Horrible ? Movie night. We're going to put a little twist on it this time. We're watching Zoolander at the Black Rock. And what day is this?
That is...
11th, right?
11th of
August 11th,
yes.
right.
We're going to stepping up our movie game until we get sued by companies.
Okay, well, we're just, we're going to be in a bar. We're going to watch Zoolander. It's going to be hilarious. It's a really, chill way to meet new people and laugh. And then, it's really funny because a lot of us, at least me and my friends that go to the movie night, haven't seen these movies in forever. And you watch them back and, the amount of times I've had to put my hands in my face from just, embarrassment of how much I used to like this and how bad it is now is pretty hilarious. So we're actually going to do, Horrible Movie Night Bingo, which is, every time you see, I don't know, a really bad German impression.
Yeah.
Right? Just different things like that. And whoever gets bingo gets a free beer. And
the mandatory David Hasselhoff cameo.
Oh, David Hasselhoff cameos, I don't know, different things. The stereotypical toker, that you'll see. All these kinds of things we're going to do. So it's going to be fun. It's a free event.
Yep.
If you want to play bingo, that's just a Luca. So it's going to be fun. That's our first event. What else is the next event coming up?
Blue Steel.
That's part of the Zoolander.
That's right.
The next event is we're having a comedy show.
Yes, we are having a comedy show which will take place on August 26th, and we're switching up venues a little bit because we are doing the comedy show in the Gran Refugio. But in the one in Barrio Italia, not the one in the center.
Right. So we'll put those addresses. For those of you who don't know what that means, we'll put those addresses on our Instagram, and they'll also be on the Chistola's Instagram, who is the comedy group that's doing that. That's at the Chistolas on Instagram. And ours is at Chile Today Podcast, obviously.
Yeah.
So, and then...
Lastly, we're going to have a new thing.
We're going to have a new thing.
Another new thing.
Another new thing. This is going to be on August 30th. It's going to be a book exchange, an English book exchange. And what you're going to do is, we know English books are super expensive and super hard to come by. So the only entry is bring an English book that you don't mind swapping. And it's going to be, we're going to play a game to see which book you get and just have a really good time. Meet other people who read books in English, and you'll walk away with a new book, and you'll see how you like it. So it's going to be fun.
Sounds
fun. Play a game with it. I'm excited. I want a new book. Or a new used book. So I think it's going to be a good time. So that one is, like I said, on August 30th. More details to come. Follow us on our Instagram and Facebook. And to get more info as those dates approach. Okay, so what are we talking about today, Lenny?
We are going to continue with our episode on fake news about the Constitution.
Yes.
Because you always knew this was going to be a two-parter, if not even more.
Well, we're actually
Yeah.
Have made a decision that, so that you guys don't get exhausted with our voices, that we're going to split these up into weekly episodes, if we can, shorter episodes. So a little bit more digestible.
Exactly.
Oh, Jinx, you owe me a beer.
Yeah, even though... Well,
I'm the one
didn't
that
bring
just
any
gave you
beer.
beer.
Yeah, I could actually do with another one, but okay.
Okay, so we're back from our beer pause for Lenny and his Germanness.
Yeah!
Yeah. And we're going to continue with
She gave me a Bud Light, just for the record.
Yeah, I gave him a Gringo beer because...
She's just trying to beat the German out of me.
Yes.
He's got to get used to American beer.
American beer. We are in America, so there's that. Though it's not.
You're not
Chile
wrong.
Beer. I'm not wrong. So, are you starting or am I starting fake news? I think you're starting.
I guess I'm starting,
You're
but
gonna
I'm gonna start with a whammy,
A whammy.
because I put this whimsical little title here. The new constitution will allow for the Mapuche to take over, which is basically just it's a stand-in for all the issues that the big fake news has. Big fake news corporation has linked to indigenous issues in the draft of the new constitution.
Right.
I don't know if
For
that made sense.
More information on indigenous issues, check out our indigenous
Dial 900.
episodes.
So yeah, so let me get started. So there were actually a few different fake news that fit under this banner, covering the whole spectrum from just
Bruce Banner
starting with Bruce Banner.
and his band.
And I don't really have a clever follow-up for that, thank you. But they were covering the whole spectrum from inane to confusing and just to downright vicious. It just a lot of things.
Racist.
Yeah, and just ugly. Yeah, why would you do that? So let's start with the one that I found almost a bit silly. So in May this year, there was a tweet that pointed out as they say here in Chile, un dato freak. Which was that the word indígena was repeated 124 times in the Constitution, while the word chileno, chilena, chilenos was only repeated 37 times. So, first off, in the article debunking this claim, the fact-checking website Lupa Constitucional, which is one of the sources that we've been using, they made a comment that was just so full of snark that I can't even. And I'm just going to quote here because I thought it was great. It said, and I translated, "Remember that in order to find a word in a document which is online, it is enough to press Ctrl and the letter G. With some computers, the command is executed by pressing the keys Ctrl and F." which is just a very indirect or direct way to say really you really
you could you
just
check your fact
yeah, this is you don't need a team of professionals to check this. So yeah.
But
so,
also I would imagine I would imagine that if I was writing an academic piece of a document, I would probably say things like the citizenry or citizens or all of these kinds of words rather than actually saying Chilean, because that.
Well, you're apparently smarter than most people who actually buy into this fake news. I was actually getting to that, but okay, look. So because actually it turns out that the word indígena didn't appear 124 times, but only 68 times because the author of the tweet, apparently what the author of the tweet did, they searched for the word indígena, but then separately for indígenas. And then they added these two numbers, even though just searching for the indígena automatically gives you all your occurrences,
God.
So it's just see, we got 224 occurrences. No, we only have 68.
Yeah, because if you don't know what we're talking about, indígena is part of the word indígenas, right? Get it? 78 times?
I got the
Yep, and
I thought you
so
said 68.
well, I was
God,
getting
numbers are so hard for non-native speakers.
Stop interrupting me. Then
See,
I'll
now
tell
we're
you.
spreading fake news. See?
No,
Look
we're
at
not
you.
spreading fake news because in the final draft, which what Diego is looking at right now,
Pinguino.
the number actually increased from 68 to 78. And that was probably because they replaced a few other terms such as preexistente with the word indígena, because they were talking about pueblos preexistentes, and they
Sure.
were like, no, let's use the word
Pre-Columbian
indígena.
maybe,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something like that.
So the author of the tweet was also wrong about the occurrences of the word chileno, chilenos, chilenas, but, and I think that's kind of funny personally, while they only counted 37 times, it was actually only 27 times. So they kind of shot in their own foot.
It's even less.
There was even fewer than what they was thinking. And look, let's that kind of like begs the central question here is like, why does it matter? Why does it even matter? Like, why do we even bother to tweet about this whole thing?
Because I mean, assuming this person's like, oh, this is representative of that. It represents the indigenous more.
Yeah,
than
yeah, of course. I
Chilean
mean, that's
people who are
like
also
very,
indigenous, so
it's very on the nose, you know, and that's clearly the point that the author was trying to make. It was that the Constitution had like this strong preferential bias for indigenous people and leave like red-blooded Chileans neglected in the dust. But look, if you give it some thought for a second, and that's what you pointed out before, you can see that like chileno and indigeno are like very specific adjectives, right? So,
Right.
and in some instances, it doesn't even refer to the people. If you take, for example, one of the articles talks about lengua de señas chilena, like the Chilean sign languages, which is just, you know, an adjective
for the type of sign
language, but
right.
it doesn't refer to the people. In many other parts, the draft just talks about the people and the citizens and persons, you know, so it's...
Because also, if you say Chileans, you're not referring to immigrants or residents. While if you say, you know, like citizens, right, that's a whole nother way that's more representative of so many more people that are living here, or the people living in Chile or whatever, like the pueblos or whatever.
Exactamundo.
Sorry, I should be represented as an immigrant in this stuff.
Right. That's right. So, another piece of fake news that was personally just fucking ugly and had actually clear intentions of just stoking racist sentiments.
Oh.
There was an actually blatantly obvious mistranslation of a speech by the Constituyente Francisca Linconao that she gave in front of the convention in her mother tongue of Mapudungun in October last year. I'm actually, is it Mapudungun or Mapusungun? Because I've seen both ways.
I have never heard Mapusungun.
Yeah,
I've never heard that either.
I
but
saw
I'm
it on
not...
a couple of pages. I don't know. It's anyway. Doesn't see that's why you that's
See,
why we
fake
pay you
news.
the
Say
big
fake
bucks.
news, Lenny. Fake news.
That's why we pay you the big bucks, Diego. Fact checking while we do it.
Pinguino.
So
He's supposed to be anonymity.
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 This is why we call him Pinguino.
Anonymous.
So yeah.
Oh, it depends on the region.
Okay. Well, so anyway.
So she gave the speech in Mapudungun or Mapusungun.
Which is just to be specific, that's the language of the Mapuche.
Is the Mapuche language, right? So she gave that speech in October last year. And in May this year, somebody took part of that speech and uploaded it to the TikTok account with fake subtitles, and that just went viral. Yeah, TikTok is just the worst.
Oh my gosh,
And
I have seen fake subtitle stuff with things in Spanish in the US though, and they're so... I saw one that was... Okay, I'm digressing a little bit because it's just a little lighthearted from the racism. Well, this is also racist too, so... This is also racist, I guess. I mean, it is. So, like, back when, like, Trump was like, build a wall, you know, and all that bullshit, like, they translated from Spanish this guy from this radio show, and the subtitles were saying, like, we're gonna get over that wall anyway because fuck Americans, and he was talking about how his like wife was like really like ugly and all, and like that was the actual thing about he was like, oh, I hate my wife, she's really ugly, you know, real boomer like humor. So it was like somebody.
So the subtitles were actually better.
Yeah, well, somebody would like put that there. It was like, I wonder if this was somebody who really
nobody's
was trying
gonna
to
figure
do
that out.
fake news, or some person actually from Mexico being like, stupid gringos, I wonder how many times they're gonna fucking share this.
Yeah.
And
oh boy, yeah.
it was bad. So
that's the same thing that they did here, but I think this must have probably been one of the easiest fake news for the fact checking websites to debunk because like the speech was literally followed up by someone else repeating the whole thing in Spanish. Like, because Francisca Licconau, she's like a little old lady, and
Yeah.
I mean, probably she speaks Spanish. I think she just tried to make a point to it in Mapudungun, but then she had I don't know if it was a daughter or whatever, another Mapuche lady, just like, okay, here's what she said in Spanish, like in the same session. And then second, the fake subtitles were
Yeah.
just absolutely fucking ridiculous because, I mean, I'm not going to translate the whole thing here, but like there were sections that said, and I quote, all of southern Chile is ours, Santiago too. So as of now, start evacuating your land and houses. If not, they will be burned down. Or you better be voting for the apruebo or there will be more violence. It's like, you see this
my
little old
gosh,
lady.
this
It's like,
little
there's
old lady.
no way that she said that.
Oh
It's
no.
and talking about this, let's say, racist aspect of this whole thing. I mean, something else that I've noticed while I was fact-checking, not fact-checking, but researching this whole thing about fake news, I've noticed that, like, besides, huh? Yeah. So, like, something else that I've noticed is that besides plainly wrong information about what changes the new constitution will and won't cause, there's, like, a ton of defamatory fake news, especially
Yeah.
targeting the Constitutional Convention's first president, Elisa Loncon, who is
Right,
also
who is-
a Mapuche woman.
She is a Mapuche woman.
She's a Mapuche, B, a woman. So those are two things.
And she's
And-
really nice. I met her.
And there is just, yeah, you did?
I did meet
Oh,
her.
nice. Mm-hmm. But there was just like so many fake news about her. That it started with a forged picture with Pinochet. That like apparently there was a picture of her as a young woman shaking hands with Pinochet. That picture turned out to be false.
Yeah, I saw that one.
To alleged connections with the Mapuche resistant movement CAM, to allegations that her diploma isn't real, to allegations that the convention approved a lifelong pension for her, to allegations that she was ousted from her position as the president of the convention, which isn't true because she just got, that she just finished her term.
Yeah, there's,
to
like, full
allegations that she
semesters to it.
refused to sing the national anthem, and oh, dude, it's just. I
But
think
also,
this
if
is.
you don't sing the national anthem, like, I don't. Again, that one particularly.
Yeah,
like, I
but
don't
whatever. But
care.
she did,
Right,
know.
right.
And I think this is just quite a reminder that misogyny and racism still makes for a powerful narrative these days. It's just sad, man. It's just sad.
It's. I mean, sad, not surprising. Me sitting
Yeah.
over here being like, "Yep,
Yep, that's right.
that would be it."
So let's talk about a few more substantial fake news that might not even have malicious intent, but came
About the
maybe
Mapuche?
about the Mapuche, but maybe it came just from a lack of legal knowledge. So one big misunderstanding has been the issue of having two or more justice system, a quote-unquote regular one and one for the indigenous nations of Chile.
Right. Yeah,
Now-
I've read about this one.
People on the rechazo side, they lose their shit and they just be like, we can't have two justice systems if there's only gonna be one state. And apparently that's not even a given anymore because since Chile is gonna become a plurinational state, there are gonna be a bunch of different nations and every one of these are just gonna do whatever the fuck they like.
So, interpretation for those of you who aren't from the U.S., because again, I am from the U.S., so this whole idea of like a separate justice system, we've always had that.
Yeah.
Well, not always, not always, but since I've been alive, we've had it, and it works completely. I mean, there are problems with at least like jurisdictional errors, but besides that, it's normal and natural, and people need to calm down. Is what I'm trying to say.
What do you mean in the U.S. you have a separate justice
Oh,
system
for the-
with the indigenous nations?
Within the indigenous nations.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
Because they have their own like quartered off land,
Yeah.
right? Which I understand completely controversial in its own like right of like if the land is actually what they're
Yeah, but
supposed to
the
have and
US is
allotment
still
and-
here.
right? But they have their own legal system
Yeah.
that and they'll have their own laws and they have their own educational system and et cetera, et cetera, et
Okay,
cetera.
good. I mean, don't want to say I didn't know that, but I've never really thought about it. But it kind of makes sense now.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I just wanted to say that for anybody listening, that's like
there's a precedent.
there. I mean, yeah, this
Yeah.
is not
This is
crazy.
not an
This is
invention.
not like a thing that Chile is pulling out of thin air. That has not worked before. It's been done. There's no
Yeah.
reason to be scared of it.
Right. So basically the rechazo side is kind of losing their shit about this, and a lot of people from the apruebo side was like, hey, chill out, there's no such thing as a parallel justice system, but as you just pointed out,
There
there
is.
is, So I gotta concede that point partially to the rechazo side, because yes, there will be parallel justice systems, but two things here. First, Article 309, Section 1 also states that the justice system of the indigenous peoples must, and I quote here, must respect the fundamental rights that this constitution establishes, as well as any and all international treaties and instruments on human rights that Chile is part of.
Right.
So in other
Same
words,
thing in the US.
they can't do whatever they want.
No,
They're
no.
still bound by by the constitution. And second, Article 308 states that the courts of law are structured under the principle of jurisdictional unity, which apparently, I'm no lawyer, means that it doesn't matter whether it's a quote-unquote regular Chilean court of law or a Mapuche or a Kawesca one. They are all part of the same framework, and Article 329 states that the Supreme Court always has the last word if things cannot be resolved in the lower courts, which includes the indigenous ones. So, So you could say, yes, there are parallel justice systems, but they are all within the same framework, if that makes sense.
Right. I mean, for example, like in the U.S., if, you have your reservations, but I'm not quite sure if that's the correct term anymore, like the allotted land to the indigenous people in the United States. If a law is broken on that land, that's when the jurisdiction of that that body takes over. However, if somebody leaves the reservation, I don't know, kills somebody within like a different territory of the U.S., the U.S. government that is their own like common judicial system would take over in that case. Like it's not like this person can get away with murder literally because the laws might be different.
Yeah, because it's like.
But
it's
also
okay
they're also dictated about like murder has no murder's illegal, because that's just like nationally mandated kind of situation. They can't just like go crazy.
Yep.
And I could actually do a whole podcast about this. It's super interesting, but it works in like it's interesting because the things that the rechazo are arguing for are not like the biggest problems that are encountered. It's not ever like, oh, they can just do everything they want. Unfortunately, it's the opposite, which is it becomes very limiting for the amount of resources that indigenous communities end up having, because obviously the judicial system in Chile, the overall judicial system is going to have many more resources than the individual communities. Sorry, I'm just going to go off on my tangent there.
Right, no, but what do you mean it's going to be more limited than it is now?
Like investigations. Yeah, for example, because if you have your own judicial system, then you're also going to have your own like investigative branch for if like a crime happens.
Okay, right.
So...
Okay, yeah, makes sense, because you cannot just call in like the cavalry from Santiago
to like help with this investigation because there's this mysterious thing that happened. I mean, I guess you could,
but then
I'm just saying the way
they would have to be trained on the specifics.
The way that the specific judicial system works, and typically that like has problems with like political problems as far as like people don't like that. It's anyway. That's
a whole can
But
of
that's
worms.
that's what I'm saying. That actually is the complete opposite problem, which is like they don't have as much power.
Yeah,
like
I
they're
get what
not
you mean.
going. And so what I'm trying to say is, yes, that it's false, and this is not a new invention, and they're not going to take over. If anything, it's going to be, I feel like, better for if we're talking about like when we talked about the violence that was happening in our episode about the crisis in the South, giving the Mapuche and other indigenous peoples their own autonomy is only going to like allow for, I feel like, more peace, more their own, I don't know, acceptance of like they're actually having some control over their lives rather than feeling like the state controls everything that they do.
I mean, I agree with that. I think this is also one of the big points that people are putting their hopes in when it comes to the Constitution, just to have people, especially in the Aragonia region, to just shut the fuck out,
Yeah. And I mean, again, there's a lot of problems with it, but like, I hope, again, the Constitution is a framework. It's not an actual, like, it's not a law. You've still got so many things to parse out within the actual laws once the Constitution is approved, if it is approved, right? So, but yeah, this is not new. Also, like, okay, I could talk about this forever. Maybe we should make a whole episode about this. It's super interesting and fascinating, actually, about like the way international law also can like step in and intervene at some points.
Yeah,
anyway.
Maybe we should change the name of the podcast to World Today. I don't know.
No, but I mean, you can talk about like, no, but it's there. Okay, sorry, keep going.
Okay, cool. So, since we're just talking about this, very much related to this is the misconception that Chile, and I quote, DC Senator Soledad Alvear, will, and I quote, no longer be a state or a republic or a nation, but will have different nations. Well, yes and no.
It's like the
Yes,
Cherokee
because
Nation.
yes, because she's correct in saying that we will have different nations on Chilean territory, and no, because having different nations does not mean that those replace the state or the republic. And this seems to be a very common misunderstanding of the term nation.
Right.
And I personally, I have to admit that I had to look this up myself. So, the Oxford Dictionary defines nation as, and I quote again, a large body of people united by common descent, history, culture, or language inhabiting a particular country or territory. Note that the term nation does not refer to a piece of land and its delimitations, but to the people inhabiting the land. So in Article 1, Section 1, the very beginning of the draft of the new constitution, Chile is defined as a plurinational state. And Article 5, Section 1 says that Chile recognizes the coexistence of multiple peoples and nations within the same frame of unity of the state.
Yeah, which
But,
makes
but
I just had a mini.
Article 279 makes it clear that the buck still stops with the president of the country, no matter how many nations are inside the territory of the Republic of Chile. And if there's still any doubt as to whether Chile is going to turn to a bunch of warring nation states, I cordially invite you
that's
to have a
the-
look at
that's the
Article
US.
1. Have a look at Article 187, Section 4, which states that, and I quote, under no circumstance may the exercise of autonomy of the nation states go against the unique and indivisible character of the state of Chile, nor does it allow territorial secession. So basically, I think this is quite similar to this conundrum with the legal system.
Right.
The definition of a nation state in the Constitution allows for more autonomy for the affected groups, but they will have to play by the basic house rules. So, for example, take the Basque Country. Like, they're still a part of Spain,
Sure.
whether they like it or not, and France, to a bit. But they are an autonomous community. Spain actually has a bunch of those in, like, Valencia, oh no, not Valencia, what's it called, the Galicia, for example. Another example would be South Tyrol in Italy, where people mostly speak German. Or Quebec in Canada, right? Quebec is not an autonomous region per se, but it's a good example of how a francophone nation can live within the same borders as an anglophone nation. And Switzerland is another example. Like, you have people
This is
speaking
not- this
four
is-
different languages, and or more to the point of indigenous nations, New Zealand, Australia, and even the US. As you just said, like, question still remains how much autonomy will be effectively granted to these nations, and this will eventually be defined by the law.
Right, and I mean, I guess again, we talked about last session,
Christmas.
last recording. I gave you my heart, and the very next day you gave it away. We talked about how like Chileans don't like change, but also we have to realize Chile was for the majority of the life of Chile. Was isolated. So this idea, this little bitty country that we live in, right, is I don't think is aware of these like differences, and so it feels like they think that we're reinventing the wheel, and we're not. We're not reinventing the wheel. We as the you know what I mean? Like we the people who are supporting the Constitution or whatever.
You feel like there's a lot of precedent from other constitutions, and I feel that a lot of people think this is just like, oh, these progressive people are, making up things as they go.
Right, because they haven't heard of. This is the thing that I think that is like really interesting that I have these conversations with my Chilean friends, is that Chileans are really hard on themselves. They're very like, oh, we're just Chile, we're small, we don't know anything, blah blah blah. And so they compare themselves to Bolivia, to Peru, to Argentina, to all these places, and they think they're going to end up like them. I'm like, you guys got to start looking towards towards Europe. You guys are not, the armpit of South America. You guys could be one of these countries that can do these great things and have this equality that
Chile's
smaller
not a poor
countries.
country.
No, it's not. Think of some of these other small countries in Europe. Why are we like, oh, we're going to end up like this country in South America when you have the funds and the resources to end up like a really awesome small country in Europe?
Yeah.
And so I think that's just like, again, like Chileans are very hard on themselves all the time. They're like, oh, we don't speak good, we don't do this, we don't do that, blah, blah. They're not Argentinians, I'll say that for sure.
I mean, something that really has been rubbing me the wrong way is
Your
when
pants.
that too, but that's none of your business. No, something that people have really got like panties in a bunch about, like from the rechazo side, which is like
And that'll rub you the wrong
they got
way.
the whole thing about the plurinational state, because they hear plurinational and then they think of Bolivia and they go like, oh my God, Bolivia. And plurinational and everything's gonna go. It's like, dude, like, okay, you know that the US is a plurinational state.
Yeah.
You know that New Zealand is a plurinational state.
Yep.
There are so many plurinational countries,
Again, because
You know.
it's very like there's scope.
but they don't have it necessarily in the constitution. I think that's it. So this next one is going to be a tough one. And sorry, but I told you this whole Mapuche section is going to be a long one. And
How dare you?
this is going to be a tough one. So please cut me some slack here because I ain't no lawyer. So give you some
we have a
context
lawyer
here.
sitting over there.
Yeah,
so.
but he's not here, not there. So like, just leave this guy alone.
He's not here nor there. No, he's there.
He's there.
He's there.
But he's not
just
here.
not here.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So in late May this year, Marcos Barraza from the Communist Party and Carol Baum from the UDI, which is
Pinochet's. I'm getting worse at this. How am I getting worse? Pinochet's political party.
good. So they were at each other's throats during a televised debate when Ms. Baum mentioned an article from the draft that said that
Oh my gosh.
indigenous
Titans.
peoples need to give their consent whenever changes in norms and laws affect them. And Mr. Barraza emphatically dismissed this as yet another lie by the right, but it turned out that Ms. Baum was actually right to a certain degree. So, in the final draft, this has become Article 191, Section 2, which, and I quote, says, the indigenous peoples and nations are to be consulted and have to give their previous consent regarding any material and matters that would affect their rights granted by this constitution. So, what are those rights? Article 34 of the final draft says, and I quote again, they have the right to autonomy, self-government, their own culture, identity and worldview, heritage, language, acknowledgement and protection of their lands, territories and resources in the material and immaterial dimension, to the special connection they have with those, to cooperation, integration, to the acknowledgement of their own traditional
Right.
institutions, jurisdictions, authorities, and to fully participate, if they so desire, in the political, economic, social, and cultural aspect of the state. That was a long paragraph. So, about here is where we cross the threshold to the cue the spooky music and add some reverb to my voice.
Realm of interpretation.
Right.
So, on the one side, we have Carol Baum in the red corner.
In the right corner.
We have Miss Carol Baum representing the Rechazo camp, who basically says, dude, like, this is as fuzzy a definition as can be. Like, how can we do anything without running the risk of some indigenous people jumping out of the woodwork and saying, like, you can't do this
But it
because
can't
it
just
affects
be
my
some
constitutional
rando-
rights one way or another.
It can't just be some rando guy who's like, ha 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 ha. It can't. It's
Well,
not how it works.
her concern was just like, okay, like somebody might come and say, like, I'm a Mapuche, and what are you gonna basically do right now? The changes that you want to make, this is gonna affect me, so you can't do that. That was, like, in very simple terms, her concern. On the other side, in the left corner, we have Marcos Barraza standing in for the Apruebo camp, who's basically just like, dude, chill. Article 66 of the draft makes it clear that all this has to happen in good faith, which is a key word here. So they can't just block proposals for no good reason. And also, we have been bound by international treaties to carry out these consultations since 2009. So
Yep.
this is nothing new. So, will the new constitution give indigenous peoples a right to a veto? Well, that really depends on the subject matter. But in general terms, it's a resounding no. They're not.
No, I mean, again, if you said a lot of words
I'm really good
earlier,
at that.
you interpreted a lot of words from the Constitution, but a lot of that has to do with their autonomy and their ability to maintain their own culture, right? So if somebody's like, we now say you guys can't do this cultural ceremony, then of course that would be directly infringing upon their autonomy to practice their culture. Like, that would be definitely something that would fall under that rank, but it
Yeah.
would still have to go through processes of like legal battles in order to be like, no.
Actually, it's a bit more technical than that, because let
tell
me get a
me.
bit into the weeds here, because I actually had to do quite a bit of research to just figure this out, because again, I ain't no lawyer.
We're not lawyers.
So
If you're new to this.
let me start to try to explain the difference between the terms consultation and consent in this context, because this is important. So on the one hand, we have the so-called consulta indígena, the indigenous consultation, I'm just going to call it, which is actually not some newfangled idea. that the Constitutional Conventions came up with. This has been around since 2008, which was it's newfangled thing. This has been around since 2008, which was when Chile ratified the so-called Indigenous and Tribal Peoples Convention, better known as Convention 169.
Yeah,
Article 6, Section A of this convention states, and I quote again, "The government shall consult the peoples concerned through appropriate procedures and in particular through their representative institutions whenever consideration is being given to legislative or administrative measures which may affect them directly." Consultation is the key word here. So
yeah, consult, not
right.
like
So this has almost been copied and pasted into the draft of
the
the new
Constitution.
Constitution, where it appears for the first time in Article 66, which is part of the Constitution's Chapter 2, which is about fundamental rights. This is important. It says the indigenous nations and peoples have the right to previous consultation in case of the adaptation of administrative and legislative measures that would affect
but
them.
doesn't mean that, as you said, the consent, which is permission.
Yes,
which is
but
different.
the consent is going to show up later on.
Okay.
So,
I'll wait.
so you might have noticed that I just mentioned that the Article 66 is part of the Constitution's chapter about the fundamental rights. So
Right.
put a pin in that because this is going to be
Pin.
important later. Now, what is this so-called indigenous consultation that we're talking about? The definition on the website of the Environmental Ministry, and don't ask me why it was there, but that's where I found it. It says that it's a
One of
mechanism.
my friends works there.
Yeah, no. Yours?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Hi, Mary. It's not Mary.
No, it's not.
Not this time.
No, her name's Andrea.
Okay. So, on the website, it says that the indigenous consultation is a mechanism for the participation based on dialogue between the state and indigenous people.
Sure.
So, whenever the state meets the requirements of having to initiate an indigenous consultation, it has to provide the indigenous community in question with all the info about what's coming down the pike. And then, in very simplified terms, they have to hammer out an agreement. Honestly, and this is really the only thing where I couldn't really get an answer. I'm not sure who has the last word, if they can come to any agreement at all, but I think it's going to be taken to the courts.
it would have to be. I would assume it's either going to be taken to the courts or it would be the state gets the last say. I mean,
I don't know.
I would highly doubt it if the Mapuche were like, well, you know what?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
I think the most
we are
likely thing
gonna
is that
require
probably,
everybody in
yeah.
our community to wear purple hats.
How dare you? Purple. So, purple hats? No. Hold on. Why purple hats if we can have a raspberry beret?
Purple rain.
So, getting back on tracks. I think it's going to be probably the courts. So,
Yeah.
the Convention 169, as well as the new Constitution, explicitly says that the negotiations need to be, and I quote again, appropriate to the circumstances
Sure.
and being held in, quote, good faith, so that the state can't just come steamrolling in, but neither can the indigenous people block everything because of spite. They can't do this either, so it has to be held in good faith. So the thing is that ever since Chile ratified the Convention 169 in 2008, the state needs to comply with initiating the consultation whenever the circumstances call for it, but they have not always done so.
Right.
And in that case, the court usually lays down the law. Case in point, actually in June this year, the Supreme Court put a lid on the ongoing bidding process for lithium rights in the Atacama region.
Oh,
and
yeah.
one of the reasons of the verdict was precisely that the government has not sought out a previous consultation with the affected Atacameño communities of Camar and Coyo and therefore impinged upon the rights. That's why I said, okay, stop this whole thing right now because you didn't do that, So this is the thing about the consultation. On the other hand, we have the concept of consent. Now, this is a slightly bigger hammer than the indigenous consultation because it basically implies that the indigenous communities have a veto under certain circumstances.
Right.
If those apply and the community in question doesn't agree, it's just not going to happen, period. So it's like they have a lot more power there. Power.
Holla.
As with the indigenous consultation, it is not only present in the draft of the new constitution, but also in the Convention 169. So it's not a new idea either. However, instead of having copied and pasted this from the convention to the constitution, as they pretty much did with the indigenous consultation, the Constitutional Convention expanded the circumstances in which indigenous consent is required. So while in the
Okay.
Convention 169, Article 16 talks about needing consent only in the case of relocation of indigenous people, the draft of the new constitution, Article 191, Section 2, reads, quote, "The indigenous peoples and nations are to be consulted and have their previous consent and have to give their previous consent
Sure.
regarding any material and matters that would affect their rights granted by this constitution."
Right, which was already addressed in 169.
Yeah, but
But
169
about
was
their
only...
autonomy.
Yeah, no, 169 talked about consent needs to be given if they are to be relocated. But people are just like, we need your
Okay,
country
right.
for, I don't know, lithium,
So
whatever.
it's like it's expanded just a bit.
Yeah, and they're just like, now whenever like the subject matter
rights
your rights
are
are being
infringed
impinged upon,
upon.
like you need to be consulted. Okay. Now let's recall what I said earlier, that
pin part.
the pin part is that Article 66, which requires an indigenous consultation if administrative and legislative measures infect indigenous people.
Infect? Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty contagious. As in Chapter 2, is in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, which deals with fundamental rights. It's there. Article 191, which requires the consent of indigenous people regarding any material and matters that would affect their rights, is in Chapter 6 of the Constitution, which is about the regional state structure and territorial organization. Do you get what I mean? So the consultation is in the section of fundamental rights. The thing
Right.
about the consent is about regional state structure and territorial organization. More specifically, Article 191 is about the participation of territorial entities in the regional state. So here's the important part.
Okay. We're here.
Since it's sorry,
We got
but
here.
it's
We
just
arrived.
yeah.
We survived to this point. We're here.
See, this is the point, because this is about the point where
I mean, again, we're speaking. Okay, I'm not. I love you. We're speaking English. I feel like most people listening to this know what the difference between consultation and consent. And so, if we're going to wrap this up into a big umbrella, we'll say it's mostly important that there's not a lot of scenarios in which the consent of the indigenous community, unless it infringes upon their rights, are going to be needed.
Well, here's the thing.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, because this is about the point where the legal interpretations diverge.
Okay.
So on the one hand, we have law professor, attorney Jorge Contes, just to drop a name here, who says that one of the basic rules for constitutional interpretations is for the exception to always be interpreted strictly within its own domain. So in this particular case, since the indigenous consultation has already been established as the general standard in the text, therefore the indigenous consent needs to be considered the exception and be interpreted strictly within the framework of the subject matter that the article touches upon, which is, in this case, the very specific domain of participation of territorial entities on a regional level. Follow?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what we're just talking about. But the question here remains is, what would be the domain of these territorial entities? Where does it start?
God,
Where
you're
does it
nerdy.
end?
Okay.
And this really depends on the eventual makeup of these territorial entities. In Article 188 of the Constitution defines that this needs to be determined by law, and as long
Right.
as this has not been worked out, none of the above will come into effect as mandated by one of the transitory norms in the
So
Constitution.
none of this is going to really matter until laws are passed. I mean, to like determine where the territories start and finish.
Yeah.
I mean, again, which is like, if I'm not mistaken, what I sort of said, like the consent has very much to do with the autonomy of, which is similar to 169, which is what you said, which is when the consent was only necessary when it's talking about moving the indigenous people. Now it seems like the consent is necessary when it affects the autonomy and the location of the territory of the indigenous people.
Yeah, but this is only the interpretation of one side. So we have also somebody, like, for example, there's this guy called Jorge Barrera, and he says, like, the fact that the proposal of the new constitution does not clearly define the jurisdiction of these territorial entities, nor describe any explicit exceptions under which the indigenous
But
consent
isn't
would
that
not
the
apply.
part of the law? Like the law.
Yeah, he says it leaves the door wide for interpretation, which in and of itself is nothing uncommon, because most traditional norms are usually subject to interpretation, because if not, there would be no need for judges and attorneys.
Right.
But
Which is
Fianzi would be unemployed.
one of the biggest problems with the Constitution that we have right now is that it has it is so limiting in its interpretation that you cannot pass new laws, which is one of the biggest problems with the current Constitution.
Okay, fair.
So, like, opening up the door to allow it to pass new laws, and also because, again, especially when you're talking about indigenous communities, the way in which we view and talk and allow indigenous communities to thrive is going to be something that is going to be ever changing and morphing. So I feel like
Yeah,
the-
but
it-
you have
we-
to also be careful with the other extreme, right?
No,
Because,
of course, but you can't have something that's too limiting, because if we do, we're just again going to have to pass another like more amendments to help like as the indigenous like representation in the country changes. Like I don't know, like
Yeah, I see. His point was that, I mean, again, like interpretation of norms is, standard. But he said was what makes this case particularly problematic is that not only the meaning is unclear in his opinion, but also the scope. So there will be law scholars that are more in line with Jorge Contes and give the article a very strict interpretation, only applying to immediate regional matters, as you just said, like the use of land use or infrastructure related norms. And there will be lawyers that give the scope of the article a very ample interpretation, and maybe even extending it to apply to possible constitutional reforms, because you could
where
also
are the
make the case.
Federalist Papers?
Because you could also make the case that the constitutional reform would be something that would impact their rights and would therefore require the previous consent, even though you got to say that Article 383 about constitutional reforms makes no explicit mention about requiring an indigenous consultation or even consent, which is also a piece of fake news that has been circulating, by the way. Like the indigenous people cannot just veto
No.
a thing, but it's not explicitly
We're
mentioned, but you
talking
can
about
make this assumption.
I think that's really important to say right here, because we are getting into the weeds, as you said. I think it is important to say, if anybody's listening to this and they're being like, "Oh my God,
If you're not
indigenous people
asleep
are
yet.
taking on," so they are taking over the world. It's like, no, that's not. No, it's not gonna. Guys, it's not. That's not how things like this work. Remember, we're not rebuilding the wheel. Like everything that's happening, there has been a precedent for this. We're not about to like give the entire Araucanía to the Mapuche and let them do whatever they want to do with it. We're attempting to do a very, very complex thing. Like, again, listen to our indigenous Araucanía coverage if you want to understand the incredibly complex situation that is in Chile. A very, in a lot of ways, unique situation that's happening in Chile. And how sticky and tacky all of this, like, all of this stuff is right now with the Constitution. Like, you have to have a strong representation of the Mapuche people in this country right now. It's 10% of the population. Like, you can't just ignore and
12%, I think, actually.
yeah. It's a huge percentage of the population, and so you can't say, well, this is just a small group of people, it doesn't matter. It's not a small group of people, it's a large group of people.
Right.
So we have to consider them very seriously in this Constitution. It's very important. So the minimum I think that they should be asked for is their having a conversation with the communities about what's happening. And for a lot of things, definitely consent. So that's what I have to say about it.
Definitely.
Darn it.
So just to wrap this up here.
You're sweating now.
I'm sweating because this was not easy.
And we're probably going to cut like half of it. I love you.
Yeah, you better not, because the context is important there. Okay. So let me retroactively apologize for the last one, because that was a...
It was a doozy.
That was a doozy. It was a doozy, and I think you have to cut out probably... Probably going to cut out a couple of things. I hope it's not going to...
If you have questions on that, feel free to ask for clarification via our email. Lenny would be more than happy to talk to you for 4.5 hours.
Yeah, I made my bed. No, and actually, let me just say that no, not oh my god, because there's another no, I'm just kidding.
And there's another point.
Yeah, well, actually, there is another point. We're not going to talk about this here. We just talked about it before the recording. We're going to try something, because that's a point apart, which would be too much for this podcast.
Wait, we already told them this. We already told them this at the beginning.
No, I'm talking about something.
We're not going to cut it here. We're going to cut it after Bethany.
No, and I'm not talking about that.
Okay. Whatever.
No, what I'm saying is we're going to try to make a little video, maybe.
Oh, Oh.
Yep, because there's another thing about the Mapuche thing, which again would be way too much for this episode. So you might be looking forward to a little explainer video if you're so inclined. So let's see if
you're
that
a
works
patron
out.
on the Patreon, then you'll get some special info about that.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. Also, don't forget all of the other perks that you get with our Patreon. And just, if you just wanted to support us.
All right,
Stuff.
enough with the Mapuches.
We'll explain the first 5 articles. After that, you gotta pay.
Nice. All right, what you got?
Okay, so mine are much more fun than yours because I'm the fun person of this. We always joke amongst Lenny and myself as good friends because we do a lot of stuff. We work together a lot, and he's very much very strict, and I'm the fun
This
one.
is the law.
And I'm the fun one, and so we always say stereotypical, he's mom and I'm dad. In a way that's obviously sexist, right, and stereotypical, but I'm the fun one. So here we go. There's the rumor going around, and I say rumor because it's fake news going around that's saying that the people working for the Constitution are costing taxpayers extra money because they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing and partying and all this stuff. So there was a video uploaded to a TikTok account. TikTok is just all over the place with this fake
It's
news
worse than
lately.
Twitter.
No, I mean, I love Reels, and I've not seen any fake news on Reels, but mostly my Reels are about, Disney princesses and, I don't know.
And also, you're
reading
such a
books.
millennial for watching Reels on Instagram.
I know I'm old, right? I don't have a TikTok. So it's went viral on social media, in which stated that the constituents are raising their own salaries, and in addition, they're going on extra winter holidays. So in a clip, there appears to be a note in the convention that reads, quote, "Convention votes for the first time approves extension of the table and sets winter vacations for next week." So obviously this was several weeks ago. However, both the clipping and the claim are false. Constituents did not go on vacation and were actually working. The viralized video on TikTok had, at the time of this, which was, I think, 3 weeks ago when they put this article, 242,000 views on social network and had been shared over 1,700 times. This account that had been uploaded it was characterized by publishing videos of misinformation regarding constituent issues. So this is not the first fake news thing that this particular account had been sharing. And saying that they had raised their own salaries. No, this did not happen either. And there was an increase in the budget, but it was increasing the resources of the convention for operating expenses, which, if you've been following the news on the resources that the convention were given, this budget was definitely necessary. What was it when they first started working? They were given Windows 8 or something to work on. It was crazy. It was something like that. What was it? It was Windows 8 or something
95 or 98.
It was crazy, and the computers were
Ding,
real
ding,
real
ding.
old, dial up. I don't know.
Shit.
There was also this.
Got mail.
There was also this rumor. Pinguino was telling me that this fake news that was saying the convention, a lot of them went to Concepcion to have this party in a hotel and got really drunk and wasted.
That's what I do when I go to Concepcion.
I mean, who wouldn't? In when they were supposed to be working, and the hotel came out and was like, what? No, they weren't definitely there. Nope, that didn't happen. They weren't here. I don't know where this came from. So anyway, and it's not true that they went on vacation, and even extra vacation hasn't even been discussed by the convention. It's just not true. There was a vote that people might think the reason they got confused was because of the allocation of resources and the addition to the constituents in the office. But that's the only thing that was happening at the time, so they're not really, really confused as to why they were saying this. Maybe also, this is my own brain speculating. Because this, not the convention, but the state of Chile extended vacations for students, and then they've had that prenatal postnatal extension, that maybe there was this bleed over to where people were assuming it was also going to be for the convention.
I think that happened after the convention was
I
dissolved.
agree. I yes, you're completely
Yeah.
right, but again, I'm trying to speculate on my own
Okay,
behalf,
okay,
why
fair.
this would. I mean, maybe it's just them, like as you've said before, like just attempting to like
Right.
just spread bullshit, right? I'm just trying to like maybe there was a confusion because there's like an extension of a lot of different vacations because of coronavirus and other viruses that have been going around. I don't know. It is false. That's what I'm trying to say. See, look how fun
false.
mine was. It was concise.
Right.
It was fun.
And
We got to talk about parties in Concepcion.
you're so much more fun than I am.
I am. It's fine.
Okay, please teach me.
I mean, this is how we balance each other out, right? Like, you're the smart one. I'm the funny one.
yeah, right. Wasn't there also like, I remember there was also something about fake news saying that they paid themselves like an aguinaldo,
Yeah, exactly. Like,
That-
giving themselves more money. Like, that's
yeah,
one
but
of those
like
things
raising the salary and then on top of that paying themselves
I
like
don't
aguinaldo. And I think there was also something about
like a
that,
bonus.
that they actually compared the budget that they used in the end. It was actually less
Yeah.
than what they had budgeted in the beginning or something. I'm sorry, I'm just like, there's something that I
No. Yeah, go for it.
read in passing, so I don't really have the deets here because if I had the deets here, I'd probably go on another rant for like 30 minutes.
Right. In math.
Yes,
I
numbers.
mean, again, there has been no evidence of misallocation of funds for the Constitutional Convention at
No
all.
misallocation of fun.
Just the misallocation of fun, which was Lenny.
Yes, that's what I'm all about. Call me.
Call me Lenny. Just don't call me Shirley. So yeah, and I guess that's also a fake news. Some fake news, uncountable noun. That's just been going around in general, that there's just been a lot of misallocation of funds, which is just not true. And how expensive the Constitutional Convention was, which, again, where's your perspective on that? Yeah, it costs more than not doing it, right?
Yeah, we just talked about this off air. It's just like people were like, okay, this is expensive, but then again, this is important.
This is the future of the fucking country. I would hope if you're going to spend money on something, it would not be disappearing money into the carabineros, which we don't know where that money went.
And I mean, I don't have the numbers here. I didn't do the math, but I think if you compare whatever you spent on the Constitutional Convention, if you compare this to, I don't know, mining subsidies or what did you say, Binguino, the whole
when
thing
all
about
of the money disappeared.
the money disappeared with
misallocation of monies from the
carabineros
carabineros and
or
the
military. Yeah, that.
Yeah, like that's like
like
you
some
would be able to pay
perspective
this like a few times.
is
If Piñera
not
would
bad.
just pay the taxes he's supposed to pay, then we could have several of these constitutional conventions. You know what I'm saying?
One each year. This is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, just the convention each year till we get it right.
Oh shit.
I mean, hey, Boric has already said that he's going to. What is it? It said impulsará, like a
Yeah,
new.
There's one every year, Harry Potter and the Constitutional Convention.
Harry Potter and the Goblet of the Constitutional Convention. The prisoner of the Constitutional Convention.
Oh, well, yeah. The boy who lived. Yeah, that actually he caught a lot of flack for that also in the media.
Harry Potter.
Oh, it was no Harry Potter, right? No, I mean
No,
Boric.
Boric saying that there will be another.
Yeah,
But
flag.
it's-
I don't know flag, but it's just like it was a big brouhaha,
But like it shouldn't have been, because the right continues to quote unquote promise that they're going to like do another one too. So as soon as Boric is like, yeah, sure,
Yeah,
we'll do another one, they're
that's
like,
the thing,
no.
I mean, I've seen like posts from the Rechazo side, like comparing Boric to Pinochet, saying that,
Wait, what?
basically saying, okay, look, even Pinochet didn't do that because we were like, look, when we had the referendum in God help me out here, 1980.
Nobody
shit.
voted for shit in.
No. But when they had the sí or no, the referendum, whether he should continue or whether,
1988.
1980,
88.
88. Damn it! Of course, that's
1980 was the
It was the Constitution.
Was the constitutional.
Oh, yeah, that's why
referendum,
1980
which
is-
yeah.
yeah, there was no referendum. But so when you had the 1988 referendum, they said, well, even Pinochet didn't say that if I'm going to lose this, I'm going to call for another one. So who makes us a dictator? I'm just like, look,
That's
Boric
not what
is not
Boric is
mandating a
No.
new. He's just saying, okay, we can maybe put it to another vote, but it's not like he can just put his foot down because that's not the power that he's been
Boric
vested
also
with.
hasn't,
He's
like,
a president. He's not a
murdered
dictator.
5,000 people, like 30,000
Well, yeah,
people.
that's not here or
and-
there, but.
That's not important according to comparing.
I mean,
Boric
yeah,
to
but it's
Pinochet,
not germane to the issue. But I get what you're saying. The thing is,
It's
like,
not germane to the issue. You're germane.
I
to the
know I am
issue.
germane to the issue. It's one of my favorite words these days.
You're germane. No. Like, no, it's neither here nor there. And of course, like, it's just it just makes no sense. Comparing Boric to Pinochet makes absolutely no sense. And Anyway.
Anyway.
A democratically elected leader versus, dictator that, forced his way in and murdered a lot of innocent people, men, women, and children. So there's that.
Well, Bush gonna murder a lot of unborn babies.
Oh, yes.
Oh, God.
Yes, I forgot about the unborn babies. Okay, everybody, that's it for this week. We are actually going to be back next week with another episode. We have more fake news coming at you, especially with some really cool information about the potential what's going to happen with the police force in Chile. So stay tuned for that. Your favorite institution in the military. So we'll see you next week. And when in doubt,
Gringo out.
bye.
Bye.
The Chile Today podcast is hosted by Leonard Kluge and Bethany Francis and produced by Diego Pingüino Rivera. For more information on the news topics you heard today, check out chiletoday.cl.